Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's 5 o'clock in Napa Valley, and that means it is 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah.
We are drinking the St. Super Napa Valley Cab. I'm going to pour some for our lovely hosts here tonight, even if you're having beer.
Now,
that's okay.
Now these guys have been our sponsors for the whole month of February?
They're our wine sponsor for the month of February,
okay.
And you can go to stsupery.com and buy some of this and enjoy it along with us. Or if you're watching this archive 2 years from now, go and look at their website and see what they have today. It most likely will be sold out.
So come to Napa and come get it yourself.
Yeah, or come by the ToutSuite Social Club, and we might have something for you to try.
Yeah.
So a couple of things I wanted to mention are we have just added an event to our calendar for Wednesday morning, which is the 27th, February 27th at 11:30. We're going to be live from the Piju Winery, actually a neighbor of St. Super. And we're going to be with the chef of Piju Winery, Emily Buller, a live interactive cooking 101 class. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. Check out our calendar for a lot of other great events that we have coming up. This week's packed and crazy and awesome. So let's just get right into the show. I want to thank you for coming, Johnny Moda.
Thank you for having me again.
And Tech Tuesday here with also James Taylor.
Hello.
And I'm Susan Quinn with ToutSuite Social Club, and we're going to take it away. Our first guest is...
I'm really excited to have these two guests today, and they're joining us from different parts of the U.S. We have Ryan Holiday. The best way of describing it, Ryan, is a media manipulator, and we're going to be talking about his fantastic book called Trust Me, I'm Lying. But first, before we move on to Ryan, we're going to be talking with Brant Cooper. And just before we came on live, we were talking with Brant speaking to us today from Montreal, and Brant is a co-author of The Lean Entrepreneur, and we're going to be talking about the lean startup. This is a big kind of meme within obviously Silicon Valley and within the Bay Area, and it's now growing exponentially around the world. And this new book, it really kind of tells a bit about the story about the lean startup and how it could be applied to many different types of businesses. So first of all, Brant, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
And first of all, what takes you? You're in Montreal today. I heard you've been having some issues, some computer issues.
Well, so I'm in Montreal for the Grow Talk, which is a series of talks that's put on by Dealmaker Media around the U.S. and in Canada. So in Montreal tonight, had a conference all day long, and then I'm off to Toronto tomorrow. But so when I was flying to Montreal, I had this great vision that I was going to land and cruise through customs and have this great Montreal experience. But unfortunately, reality stepped in, and I left my backpack on the plane, and so I've been sort of figuring it out on the fly based on the reality on the ground. And so I'm with you today on a rented PC that I obtained about 10 minutes ago. So this is a way to show perhaps that the reality on the ground is different than how we imagine the day going.
The glamours of travel. And are you a Mac guy? So have you suddenly had to go back to the dark ages of working with a PC for us tonight?
Well, it's funny, I actually was PC for, and I don't mean politically correct, but I was PC for most of my career. Matter of fact, I think it made my career. The advantage to the PC for guys like me and gals when networking and computers were just starting out, PCs, because they were so hard to use and broke down all the time, gave us our career. So I actually started in IT management. So I'm thankful to the PC world for that. But I actually converted to the Macintosh about a year ago. But yes, I am back on a PC and really did not know how to use the buttons here. So just 1 year later, I'm clueless.
Well, hey, thank you for going to those links.
Going the extra mile.
You win the prize of the week.
Yeah. So tell us first of all about what is a lean startup. A lot of people obviously in technology in the Bay Area have known this, but it's seeming to to move out of just being talked about amongst the tech community. Tell us about, what the lean startup movement is all about.
Sure. So the lean, it's important to understand that the term lean from lean startup does not mean small. It doesn't mean, don't have a vision. It doesn't mean don't take money or don't spend money. The lean comes from the term lean manufacturing, which is what described the way Toyota was building cars in Japan in the 50s. And the idea there was really about the elimination of waste. So when you're manufacturing a car, you have these value-add activities, such as actually assembling the parts of a car for a known, maybe it's a minivan for a known customer, maybe a soccer mom. And so you have value-add activities. You're actually assembling the car parts. And then you have non-value-add activities, which might be forklifting parts from one side of a warehouse to another. Some non-value-add activities are necessary, but the idea of lean is to, while maintaining value, the value that you're creating, eliminate as many of the non-value-add activities as possible and making as efficient as possible the value-add activities. So I'm wondering if I've lost you there.
No, you're great. You're great.
Okay, great.
And so here in the whole kind of Stanford thing, I think it was Eric Ries who obviously the lean startup, but it goes obviously then before that, like was it Steve Blank that was involved in things initially, and then that came in obviously from the Japanese side of things.
Right. So, I think one of the important things to understand is that this stuff is actually not new, that successful entrepreneurs have been doing this for ages. And so, for example, we have a couple of startups from the 90s that were using some of the concepts of what we call the Wizard of Oz viability test, right? So you're trying to de-risk your idea, and so there's a way to sort of fake it, and see if people will actually buy your product before you spend 6 months or a year building the technology. And so, Zappos, for example, is a great example of a Wizard of Oz viability test. So, the founder wants to sell shoes online, but he doesn't own any shoes. He hasn't struck a deal with any shoe manufacturers. So he builds a website, and he doesn't have any shoes to display. So he literally walks down the street, goes into a shoe store, takes photographs of the shoes that are there, walks back to his office and uploads those images onto his website. And so he's waiting for a customer to come, drive some traffic to the website. Somebody orders some shoes. Well, so what do? You go back downstairs and you walk down the street and you buy that pair of shoes and you ship them to the customer. So you haven't spent a ton of money building the technology, but you've proven that people would be willing to buy those shoes online. So that's sort of one of these classic viability tests. And so I guess the fundamental difference between the lean startup and lean manufacturing is that in a startup, you actually don't know the value that you're creating and you don't know for whom. So Eric Ries talks about in his lean startup book, the idea of validated learning. So how you measure waste in a lean startup is all of your activities should be generated about whether you're learning whether your business is going to succeed or not. So you can actually step through the riskiest parts of your business model and validate them before you spend a lot of time and money building something that won't work in the marketplace.
But some of these things, you mentioned it being around, some of the stuff being around for a while. There was in the I think the 50s, they used to have authors used to take out ads in little local newspapers saying, one was a book about fly fishing. Send $1 if you want to get the book about fly fishing. Another one would be a book about skiing. And the author had never written any of these books. But what they would wait and do is they'd wait and see the dollar checks come in and see which one got the most interest. And then that's the book that they would eventually write. So that's the kind of 1950s equivalent of the lean startup, I suppose.
That's exactly right. It's a classic smoke test. As a matter of fact, a lot of the direct marketing that you see on TV, there's a good reason why the product might take 4 to 6 weeks to be delivered, right? There's no need for that in terms of today's manufacturing. So they actually don't want to build it until you buy it.
Yeah. Brant, excuse me. What I see a lot of now these days are, I would say, the in the now current equivalent of that, and it may not be directly what you're saying, is a lot of startups are doing all that, building the buzz and taking pre-orders through Kickstarter or or crowdfunding, crowdsourcing that way.
Yep,
And,
that's a great example.
If you pre-order, you see the demand, and then they're proving to their VCs, we have $1 million in pre-order sales. We want the funding, the backing, and to build X product that doesn't even really exist yet.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's before Kickstarter, the lean startup stuff was starting already, or at least before Kickstarter got popular, and people would come up to Patrick and myself and say, oh, this lean startup stuff doesn't work. I want to build this consumer gadget. And of course, now I love to be able to say, yeah, go put it on Kickstarter. That's
Right.
That's great. It's a great viability test. As a matter of fact, we have a small case study of a company called that produces the Olo Clip, which is a high powerful camera lens that clips onto your iPhone, right? And that's how they got started. He really wanted to get into the App Store and to Best Buy and all these things, but it's hard to do as a startup, right? Why are they going to bet on you? And so he got all of his funding and his early orders straight from Kickstarter, and then those companies come to him because of the success that he's shown.
But it's also an aspect of Kickstarter. It's hard to be recognized whether a lot of things are quite good, but they don't have the marketing. So you kind of have to have a pretty good understanding of marketing to get your Kickstarter campaign noticed, or what kind of network do you need to have?
Well, I think that there's two things to that. One is there are best practices out there. And so when it comes to doing Kickstarter campaigns or other campaigns on other crowdsourcing sites, you need to follow what has worked in the past. And so, that actually is a little bit different than the way I might have taught Lean Startup a couple of years ago, where you wanted to do sort of low-key marketing until you figured out that you've nailed the product. In terms of a Kickstarter campaign, you actually have to make people aware of this campaign that you're going, and then based on the quality of your pitch and your quality of your idea, you'll get funded. So it's a little bit different, but there you are, you're selling it before you're building it, and so I think it's a great way to demonstrate that there's actually demand for your product idea.
And now I suppose this year we're going to go to that next stage again, where previously you could get crowdfunding for your product. Now you're soon possibly going to be able to get crowdfunding for your entire business if the SEC allows that to happen. So that's the kind of the super lean company, because you may just have an idea, not even for the product yet, but actually have an idea for a business in a particular segment that you could look to raise the money and test the assumptions. Will someone fund this business?
Well, I think it quite possibly is going to be very disruptive to the financing of business. So, maybe venture capitalists, and one of the reasons why I think it might be big at disrupting venture capitalists is because they swear that it'll never happen. And so to me, when a venture capitalist says that, it's a good sign that it will happen.
Yeah.
And the other side of it, though, is, which I find interesting, is that we were actually, Patrick and I, doing a workshop for a very large financial services company, and it sort of occurred to me when we were doing this workshop that, based on Kauffman Foundation data, the percentage of large companies that actually took venture capital to get started is really small. As a matter of fact, the amount of mind share that we give to venture capital versus some of the other ways of getting a company funded is way out of proportion to actually the number of companies that succeed and grow based on that type of financing. And the way financing typically happens is through credit cards and small business loans. And that actually may be what crowdfunding disrupts even more than venture capital, right? So suddenly you don't have to put stuff on credit cards. Well, I bet you that's actually a decent size of business to major financial services companies. So I wonder if they're actually even aware of this disruption that might be happening on that front.
And you kind of dispel this idea of the visionary entrepreneur. Especially the media, they always portray the entrepreneur as the Richard Branson, the Bill Gates, the real visionary. You take a different tack on it in your book. Can we just talk about what your take is on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think that the problem is that the story that's told, to make it a sexy story in the media, is sort of the lone wolf guy who's got this genius that he can actually look to the future, and he's imagining the future, and then suddenly an epiphany happens and this product appears to him in his mind, and he knows is just going to crush it in this future that's coming. And so he must, have conviction and faith in his idea and sit down and build it for 6 months or a year, and then produce this product, and the market will beat a path to his door, and suddenly overnight success, right? So, what other way to say it other than it is a myth? It doesn't happen. Steve Jobs didn't do it that way. Bill Gates didn't do it that way. Thomas Edison didn't do it that way. And so this story actually is pretty pernicious, I believe. Number one, it actually, for some of the population, it makes them say, okay, I'm not a visionary. I wasn't born with this gift. Therefore, I can't make significant change in the world. And these people march off into their daily jobs without believing that they can actually make change and being creative. They're not empowered employees, right? And I think that this adversely affects even large businesses. And then there's the other group that says, okay, yes, I declare myself a visionary. I put it in my LinkedIn profile, and I'm off to the gates. And so therefore, I'm going to build my product based solely on what I believe between my ears. And what happens is that market reality hits them cold and hard, and they have this failure, and they don't know why. And it's because they didn't interact with the market. They didn't figure out, where their vision was wrong and where they should have changed in order to make the big win. And so I actually believe that Bill Gates and Branson and Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs are visionaries, but it's based on a different definition of visionary. And it's that these people were relentless in their pursuit of change. And it had less to do with how they thought the change was going to happen, but their insistence on that change would happen. And so to me, the vision is important. It's a lighthouse. You rally the team around this direction that you're going. This is the lighthouse. But you let the realities of the real world dictate when you're going to change that direction, and then you rally the team around the next direction. And often the biggest disruptions that happen in our economy are things that people stumble upon, or these opportunities emerge as they're chasing this vision, and they're willing to let the market pull them into a new direction that achieves big change. Jeff Bezos, when he decided to sell books online, didn't predict in his own mind that he was going to completely disrupt the publishing industry. Steve Jobs didn't predict that he was going to completely disrupt the music industry. These were opportunities that emerged themselves as they relentlessly pursued change that they wanted to see in the world.
And one of the, if you go to the website for the book, is it leanentrepreneur.co? I seem to remember.
That's correct.
That's
a great way to learn more about the book.
Yeah, about the book. You can actually download the first chapter in the book, and one of the case studies that you have in that first chapter is a company called Take Lessons. And we actually, last week on the show, we had Maynard Webb, the board member of Yahoo and Salesforce.com, who was an early investor in Take Lessons. So tell us a little bit about how something like Take Lessons use the kind of lean startup approach.
Well, so I think that Take Lessons is a great example where they had a vision. They wanted to change how people who are looking for music lessons get those music experiences. And I think that at first they created they sort of had all of these assumptions about what this marketplace was going to look like. So they were building a two-sided market, right? So people that wanted music lessons and people that provided music lessons. And the way I describe it is that Marketplace 1.0 was you would take those two sides and you throw them together and magic will happen, right? And you hope that these people will be able to conduct transactions and maybe you'll get a cut off of the lead. Well, Marketplaces 1.0 suck. They don't work. It's not what people want, right? So they had sort of, based on the reality in the ground, on the ground, they said what we really needed to do was protect the user experience. And so they developed really in very short order a new minimum viable product, which was on one side committed to protecting the user experience, and on the other side only allowing music teachers into the marketplace that would provide this great experience. And so they built out a call center, and this to me is sort of a new trend. And in a lot of ways, it's sort of like what I would call the concierge, or what people call the concierge viability test. In other words, instead of building a bunch of technology, you actually, by hand, make a transaction happen and then see if you can take a cut of that transaction, and that proves the viability. So what they did is they built a call center instead of a lot of technology. And then they took those leads of both music instructors and the people that wanted the music instruction. They paired them together by hand and then protected that user experience. So if the teachers didn't call back or the teachers weren't good teachers, they were kicked out of the system, and then they would recruit new instructors, and they still continue to kick teachers out that don't provide the proper experience. What the music teachers get in return is all of their billing taken care of. They get curated leads for them to pursue. They Take Lessons gives them essentially a music lesson monopoly based on a geographic area. So Take Lessons is concentrated on providing value to both sides of the market rather than just sort of munging them together. And so far, I think they've done an amazing job. And so I think that, people look at that business model and they say, oh, well, this concierge method's not scalable. And, well, they're right. But once you build that transaction, once you build the relationship, then you can start learning about what parts of that equation can you automate in order to make it scalable. And that's really what Take Lessons is working on now. They're streamlining their processes, building the technology that automates bringing this curated experience together.
So you've kind of got these, obviously the startup world being very much into the lean startup concept, the idea. You're talking about some of maybe these larger companies, the Fortune 1000 companies. When are we going to start to see a government that maybe starts to take on some of these things? Lean startups. We're trying to get in the US here just now. We're trying to get through a new kind of startup act. I think it's called Jobs 3.0 because the third attempt at trying to do it. Do you see? I mean, you do a lot of consulting, in many different organizations. Are you starting to see any the government or that NGO world start to take on some of those principles?
Well, so I personally have not worked with any government agencies yet. I know Todd Park, who's I believe the CIO or the CTO of the U.S. government, is very much into this lean startup, and he actually talked at Eric Ries's conference back in December. Trevor Owens, who runs the Lean Startup Machine, which are workshops around the Lean Startup methodology, and gets participants out of the building. Actually, I guess just did a workshop for the United States Postal Service, and that was featured on Bloomberg, I think, a week ago. And so I think that there are signs. I think government is a tough nut to crack. I think as large enterprises do this and succeed, that I definitely think you'll see the government follow. Clearly the proof is in the pudding. I'm sort of optimistic, but we have a long ways to go in that regard, I think.
So we're kind of, the viewers are watching, they're interested in learning about lean startup. Obviously, we've got a lot of winery owners, people in the food industry that watch the show as well. What's the best way that you would suggest to them to find out more and how that kind of lean startup methodology and the mindset can be applied to their business?
Right. So it's interesting. I was actually in Calgary several months ago and did a lean startup workshop for people in the food business, and so it definitely applies to your audience. Philosophically, it's are you willing to sort of give up on believing what's between your ears and differentiating between what is truly known and what is unknown? I think that the best way to get started is to pick up a copy of Eric Ries's book, The Lean Startup. Order The Lean Entrepreneur, which ships here at February 26th. There's resources available online. There's meetup groups so you can meet with people offline as well. So there's just a ton of resources for people to dive into this at whatever speed that they're comfortable with. But I really do recommend that people start off with Eric Ries's Lean Startup book. My first book, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Customer Development, is also a very simple read to get started on this stuff. But I actually encourage people to form a meetup group, go offline and start, speaking with other people that are trying to grow their enterprises or start new enterprises and discuss this stuff in real person. And I find it I think people find it very helpful to come up with ways to interview customers and ways to design purpose-built experiments to de-risk their ideas. And bouncing those ideas off of colleagues is actually a great way to get started.
Fantastic. And one of the things I noticed on the site is you're kind of bundling the book in an interesting way. So, many people, if an author releases a book, and we've had some great authors on the show recently. We had Rolf Potts on. We had Chris Guillebeau was on recently. Yep. Did the $100 startup book. Yeah. But you have these kind of bundles, and it reminds me a little bit of the music industry. Where the music industry suddenly they gave everything away as individual downloads, and now a lot of bands are kind of changing things, and now they you have the $10 bundle, then you have the $100 bundle, then you have the $1,000 bundle. How are you kind of using that within the launch of the book?
Yeah, so I mean it's a classic startup strategy. We actually we're treating our book launch as a startup, and so in this day and age, a book publication is just one aspect of the products that not only people desire and expect, but it's just one part of a product strategy. And so the bundles are actually, the deal for the bundles is actually over because the book is launching, though we will make available those bundles at a future date as well. But the idea simply was that people don't want just books. They want video. They want audio. They want to hear from the entrepreneurs that we discussed. People want to hear from them directly. They want workbooks that they can get their ideas out on paper. And so we provide all of those type of things in order to help entrepreneurs figure out what's the key activity that they should focus on in order to move the needle of that business where they are today. And so again, it's treating it like a startup. It is a business. It's not just a book. And so this is a launching pad for future products and services that we hope to make available to entrepreneurs everywhere.
A living, breathing entity.
Fantastic.
That keeps on living.
That's great. And before we'd like you to kind of stay with us if you can, if you don't have to head off. But our next guest that's coming up now is Ryan Holiday, and I believe you actually spoke about Ryan and his book in The Lean Entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, I mean, Ryan's book is fantastic. I love the book. It actually, in my mind, is important for startup entrepreneurs. And I think you'll probably get into it a little bit with him. It's not only media manipulation, maybe on the dark side a little bit, but it's also media manipulation in a way that when your startup is ready, here's a way to get your story out there and to really accelerate growth. The key in my mind is that you want to nail your product first, right? So marketing is really amplifying buzz that your product is already creating, and this is exactly what Ryan's done with the companies that he's worked for, and he's illustrated how to do it in the book.
Well, if you can, we'd love to stay on. We'd love to hear some questions to Ryan as well.